Another clear area in which India's influence on the rest of the world has been felt has been the diaspora, India's population who've migrated over the last decades and even hundreds of years around the world. This isn't just limited to the leaders and scholars who have found global audiences in their travels, stretching back as long ago as the Indian aesthetic that was encountered by Socrates in the streets of ancient Athens, or in the first millennia AD, when Buddhist monks taught the Chinese, Japanese and Koreans the teachings of Lord Buddha, and the Hindus who taught art, architecture, engineering, medicine, metallurgy, language and more across modern-day Southeast Asia. In the modern era, there was Swami Vivekananda at the Parliament of the World's Religions in 1893 in Chicago. Rabindranath Tagore on his lecture tours around the world in the early 20th century, going to both the East, Japan and China, and the West, Europe and, of course, America. Or all of those gurus like Paramhansa Yogananda, the author of the 4 million copy selling autobiography of a yogi, cited by the likes of Steve Jobs as one of his favorite books, and Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, who captured the attention of the Beatles and many others of the hippie generation with his teachings and meditation practice. Or even more recently, the successful entrepreneurs and inventors associated with some of our most ubiquitous technologies, like Ajay Bhatt's USB.
We are Intel, sponsors of tomorrow.
And Vinod Dham, the father of the Intel Pentium chip. But India's diaspora, more broadly, as a whole, has had a large impact on the world. Globally, the NRI and PIO population today is estimated at over 30 million people. NRIs are non-resident Indians, Indian passport holders who live overseas, expats. PIOs are persons of Indian origin, Indians who have either taken citizenship of another country and given up their Indian passport, or who are descendant from family members who used to live in India. Or, in the case of people like myself, proud to be PIO, are married to an Indian citizen. This diaspora population has grown across the world and has a fascinating history. While Indian scholars and traders travelled the world for thousands of years, much of the origins of this current diaspora lie in the British Raj period, when Indian professionals, like lawyers or accountants or doctors, would travel to work in other parts of the British Empire. And of course, there were Indian labourers who were forced to work on plantations in parts of Africa and northern South America. The Gulf oil boom in the 1970s spurred a wave of Indian migration to the countries of the Arabian Peninsula. For example, now nearly 1/3 of the population in the United Arab Emirates are from Indian origin, places like Dubai and Abu Dhabi and Sharjah. According to India's Ministry of External Affairs, in 11 different countries, there is an Indian diaspora of more than 1 million people, while in as many as 22 countries, there are at least 100,000 Indians. According to 2015 UN data, 15.6 million people born in India now live elsewhere, more so than any other country. In fact, in the 2010 US Census, over 3 million people identified themselves as being of Indian descent. Today, higher education and the need for highly skilled labour are two of the main drivers, particularly to high-income countries like the United States. According to the IIE's Open Doors report, in 2015, 132,888 Indian students came to the US for higher education. Nearly 1.5 million Indian students have studied in the US in the last 20 years. In week 6, we'll look at what impact this diaspora has had on India in terms of brain drain and now brain circulation, as many more Indians who previously would have stayed in America and other countries are now returning to opportunities in India. But for now, let's consider the impact of this diaspora on the United States. A forthcoming book called The Other 1%, Indians in America, by Sanjoy Chakravorty, Devesh Kapoor and Nirbhaka Singh, will be the first data-driven, comprehensive look at the role of the Indian community in America. It seeks to answer the questions of how people from a poor, developing country have become the highest income and the most educated group in the most advanced nation in the world within a single generation. One chart is particularly attention-grabbing, mapping income and education among America's foreign-born population, shows how Indians are in a class by themselves, well above other ethnic groups in terms of income and education. More than twice as many Indians in America have postgraduate degrees than their old colonial masters, the English. What's more, the average family income of Indian family households is more than 50% higher than the English-born households. With that broad picture of the size of the Indian diaspora and its place in the United States, a few other data sets show India's impact on America. A 2012 NBER study of mobility patterns of scientists found that among 16 of the major research-producing countries surveyed, India had the largest percentage of researchers who emigrate and the smallest percentage of researchers who immigrate. More so than any country surveyed, nearly 40% of scientists living in India at the age of 18 were now working or studying in a different country in 2011. This is the classic brain drain story, and the US has been the main beneficiary. Probably an obvious one to American university students who surely find many Indian professors on campus. Of course, the brain drain story is more complicated. Brain circulation is the case today, and that's the phenomenon that we'll discuss in week 6. The joke used to be that NRI didn't stand for non-resident Indian, but never returning Indian. However, as we'll see in week 6, it now seems to be becoming more like now returning Indian. A 2015 National Science Foundation study has identified that in a workforce of nearly 29 million scientists and engineers, nearly 1 million are Indian, more so than any other foreign country, in fact more than all of Europe put together. Another study has amassed a data set of 2,200 computer science faculty at the top 55 US computer science graduate programs. Close to 10% of these faculty members received their bachelor's degrees in India. Of the 37 different universities that educated at least 10 faculty in this list, 22 of these were unsurprisingly from the US, but 6 were from India, versus 9 from the rest of the world. In addition to these surveys, India's dominance in the H-1B visa program is the most prominent example of India's contribution to the United States STEM workforce. The H-1B visa program is designed to allow US employers to temporarily employ foreign workers in the US in special occupations like technology. Of the H-1B petitions approved in 2014, the latest for which data is available, 70% reported that the beneficiary was born in India. In 2013, nearly 86% of the H-1B visas issued by the US government for workers specifically in computer occupations were for people from India, according to a Computer World analysis of government data obtained through a Freedom of Information request. The H-1B program demonstrates the scale of India's skilled workforce. Indians have also reached the top of some of the world's best companies. Safra Katz, CEO of Oracle, recently said that 75% of her management were Indian, in addition to the 30% of the workforce who work for Oracle in India. Today, technology companies like Google, Microsoft, Adobe, SanDisk, FMCG companies like Pepsi, and finance companies like MasterCard are all run by CEOs raised and educated, at least to the bachelor's degree level, in India. Indians have found success in Silicon Valley particularly. A 2016 NFAP study found that 44 of America's $87 billion unicorn startups have an immigrant co-founder. Among these immigrant co-founders, 14 were from India, nearly double the next country on the list, Canada and the UK, which tie at 8. So what we have shown is that not only in terms of scale, but also at the very highest level of company founders and CEOs, India has an important and growing influence on US economy and society. We haven't really even had a chance to discuss the contributions of persons of Indian origin born in America, or those outside the realm of technology and business, like the many doctors and business owners, including the Indians who own 50% of America's motels. But certainly India's influence extends far beyond this. If you look at fields like the media, you'll find Fareed Zakaria on CNN or Hari Srinivasan on PBS. If you look in medicine, you'll find Vivek Murthy as the US Surgeon General. In the field of law, Sri Srinivasan was under consideration for the US Supreme Court. In literature, you'll find Indian-American winners of the Man Booker and Pulitzer Prizes. In American TV and film, you'll notice a growing role for Indian characters filled by the likes of Mindy Kaling, Aziz Ansari and Kunal Nair in my favourite show, Big Bang Theory. Or behind the camera in the case of director M. Night Shyamalan. An Indian-American, Nina Davuluri, even captured the title of Miss America in 2014. And of course, Indian-American children have proved to be incredibly talented at everything academically, from SATs to spelling bee competitions. I think it's a pretty safe bet that the winner of the 2016 spelling bee competition will be an Indian American. This has been a brief look into the overall impact of India's people around the world, particularly those in the US. The flow of Indians to countries around the world has often been a facilitator to trade networks, and that is our next major theme, to understand India's influence on the world through trade.